Any topics of discussion during a broadcasted show is in no way the exclusive view nor opinion of the host or any web radio network staff. You're listening to the Fox Paranormal Chat on the W.E.B.B Radio Network. And now, Michael and Destiny Fox.
Hiya, hiya. How y'all doing?
Good evening, my pretties.
Oh, you're in one of those moods. Look out.
Yeah, I'm in one of those moods tonight. I am ready to go.
I am in a mood. I don't know. Our checking account got hacked from my debit card. Over $2,000 worth of charges for Call of Duty. I don't play Call of Duty. I don't have a clue anything about it, but it'll be 2 or 3, 4 days before I can get the money back. So till then, my account's frozen.
Frozen
We've got to
solid.
live off of $20. No, I'm kidding. We got a little bit more than that. Not much more, but some. Kobe had a family emergency he's tending to, and so it's just Michael and I tonight. How about that? We are going to dive in the story of what, Michael, while I share this on our page?
We are going to be looking at alien abductions, and we're specifically going to be talking about Betty and Barney Hill.
Well, what exactly is alien abduction? Just, is there like a good scientific definition? Michael knows everything about anything. I promise you. Talk to him and see.
I happen to have looked that up earlier today, matter of fact, Destiny. So I do have a alien abduction refers to the phenomena of people reporting that they believe to be real experiences of being kidnapped by extraterrestrial beings. That is the official definition.
Wow.
So, I mean, you got to pay attention here. It says they believe is how they word that.
I think it really could happen. I mean, I am just, if that screen is kicking, it's because I have my legs crossed and the tripod is like almost sitting in my lap tonight, readjusting. I'm like, Michael, move over here, move back, because I was trying to get just the black curtain in.
I think, we really would like to have feedback tonight during the show.
Yes. That would be perfect.
Our people watching tonight, if you got an opinion or something you want to share with us, jump right in there, guys.
Yeah.
We're ready.
I don't know. Stan and Teresa are on the road right now, bringing forth our broadcast. So I don't know if they can put up comments. And I've got notes here on my phone that I want to refer to during this story. So, has anybody actually ever had loss of time that we know of? I can't think of anybody. No. What about you guys? Have you ever lost an hour or 2 hours and you don't know what happened to you? I mean, seriously, you could have been abducted by an alien.
There was this one time in high school, I was at a party.
Oh, that don't count. Oh. Michael, was that when you stole the military Jeep?
I did lose time.
Yeah, it's a wonder you didn't get time when you stole the military Jeep and wrecked it. Oh, the stories this man tells me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But Betty and Barney Hill is a story I've been fascinated with for years, because I I believe this story. It come from two middle-aged people who were not out looking for UFOs. We're not out
No.
looking for the little gray men or green men. I
Didn't
think most people report them being gray when
they
see
didn't have a
them.
prior history of this?
No, well, now Betty's sister, sometime before, now she had reported that she had told her sister Betty that she had on a couple of occasions thought she saw a UFO.
Well, that's interesting. So there was a little bit of talk before this incident allegedly took place.
Right, there was.
I mean, we got to look at the time frame too, Destiny. You know, we're talking back, years and years ago. They believe, that like 1949 era was when the UFO age was born. People started.
Was that
Roswell, yeah, where people started reporting they're seeing, flying objects in the sky, and it just went on from there.
When I'm out and about, I'm always looking at the sky. When we're out and doing stuff, I'm always watching because I want to believe. I really want to experience it myself. I'm not saying anybody's going to believe me if I ever do, but because I want to see something, I never will. Y'all know that as good as I do.
When I was a kid, I used to love watching My Favorite Martian. His little antennas would come up out of his head.
I'm going to be taking applications for a new co-host here pretty soon. So if you're interested, just shoot me an email. But this story takes place September 19th, 1961. That's a long time ago. What, 62 years ago?
Yeah, that's
New Hampshire. At
At
approximately 10:30 p.m. Middle-aged couple driving in a lonely rural area when they notice a striking irregularity in the sky. It looks like a bright star, but it moves in an unusual way. And Barney, which is the husband, suggests it's a satellite or a plane. And the more they watch it, the less certain they become and curious. So what they actually did was they stopped the car several times. This bright light, and it's moving around. They stop. Barney has binoculars, I think 7x50. I don't know anything about them. I don't know if that's high powered, which it possibly could be.
Maybe for that time frame, it was pretty high powered.
Yeah, I'm sure we've got newer technology that can let you see a long way off. But they notice that it's moving different directions, changing its course. But the one thing that made them realize that it maybe wasn't a star and it maybe wasn't a satellite is at one point they see this thing coming straight at them, straight to them. And so I'm going to tell you, as bad as I want to see something, if something is coming toward me, I'm probably going to put it in reverse and go. But it wasn't a plane or a satellite. It wasn't nothing they were familiar with seeing in the sky. And their story was supposed to stay kept just between them two, but they shared the story with some others. They never meant for it to reach the height that it reached. That was never their intention. They wanted to keep this all to themselves.
What was interesting too is in that time frame, they eventually reported their story to the Air Force because the Air Force was taking testimonies from people about seeing UFOs.
In their particular story, though, they left out details because they didn't want it to make them sound like they were foolish or anything. But at the time, Barney was 39 years old and his wife was 41. So this is not a couple that's out pretty much to make up a story.
No.
I wouldn't think.
No.
So they're traveling with their dog named Delcy, and they were traveling along State Route 3, making their way to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They were on their way home from a brief spontaneous vacation they had taken to Canada. Concerned by reports of incoming hurricane, they had planned to travel late in the night and reach home by 3 a.m. at the latest. Though a storm was on the way, they said the sky was clear on this night in the area in which they were in. They were traveling in a rural, forested, and mountainous area. Though it wasn't completely in the middle of nowhere, the area certainly wasn't populous. No cars had passed them on the highway that night as they made their way to a brief stop at a restaurant in Colebrook, which they left at 10:05 p.m. The hills were just south of Lancaster when about 10:30 p.m. Betty noticed a bright light appearing in the southwest sky near the moon, and she believed it to be the planet Jupiter, and she wondered if it was a shooting star. However, she had doubts from the beginning, namely because these so-called shooting stars were moving upward. Stars don't move upward when they're shooting.
No,
They
or
make a
move
trail
down,
across
or
the sky.
across.
And then you make a wish on them.
Yeah.
Have you ever wished on a falling star?
Many times.
I have. It never came true, but I've made wishes on them before.
Mine did.
Yeah, but now Barney just kept sticking to this story. Have they?
Mm-hmm.
What came true?
You're sitting here, aren't you?
Oh, baby, did you wish me up on a falling
I sure
star?
did.
Oh, that's so sweet. So as this object moved closer to them, it became bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter. So the chances that this was a satellite were totally out of the question for them. Um, Barney began to notice that the course was come a little erratically. They began to sink in and out, and there was no way it was a plane or a helicopter, but it certainly began to grow in the back of his mind as well. When they stopped near Cannon Mountain, the object was now to their right, and they were moving in opposite directions. Then they observed a turnaround and began moving in their direction. Betty believed it was following them at another stop, and the object passed in front of the moon, and Betty observed what she claimed was a wingless, cigar-shaped craft with a flashing series of red, amber, blue, and green lights around its body. So many people that report seeing UFOs, this is the shape that they always say, a disc-shaped object with lights around it.
I've heard the term cigar shape mentioned many times over the years in different reports too.
Right.
So, it goes along with what she said.
Right. So if it's coming toward you, it's making this shape here.
Mm-hmm.
So that I want to see one so bad one day. With the lights blinking, she immediately suspected that the object was a flying saucer. And not only had she, like most Americans at the time, heard of the topic before, but her sister had claimed to have seen UFOs a few years earlier on 2 separate occasions. Barney, however, remained determined that it was an aircraft of some kind. And actually, their account of this and retelling the story, he started to get a little irritated at her.
He was definitely the skeptic of the two.
Yes. But I guess it's because her sister had claimed to see one previous that she thought, well, that may be what I'm seeing here. And what are the chances that her sister had seen one and then she did? Barney began to get the feeling that he was being watched. The dog began to whine as if it was afraid at some point. And Barney grabbed his .32 caliber pistol from his trunk. And then they resumed driving as they observed a light on the top of Cannon Mountain go off as the object flew behind the mountain. And the object then reappeared on a rock called the Old Man of the Mountain and began flying in the same direction as the cars. They continued traveling the hills past a motel they made it in the direction to continue driving back into the empty, lonely darkness. Not only after the object, now only a few hundred feet in the air, moved in front of them, and Betty could see it better as Barney was driving, and said the object now appeared to have a steady white glow and appeared to be spinning and moving in an unusual step-like pattern. When you watch all those old movies about UFOs, I mean, it's like that's what she's describing. So, what year were those movies? They were like 40s, 50s?
Yeah, you're looking probably mid 40s, early 50s. There was a lot of UFO movies, alien type stuff put out that people were seeing on television for the first time. Now, you got to remember, television was at its early stages back in those days. So when they saw something on television, they believed it.
Mm-hmm.
They thought it had to be real.
Oh, and then that radio show years and years ago, I remember my mother talking about it, where it was a joke, and I think it might have been Halloween night, about aliens have landed.
Yeah.
And caused that big stir. People were panicking. I wish I'd looked that story up. That would have been fun to tell.
Orson Welles.
Yes, it was unreal.
Yeah. Orson Welles, the big Orson Welles scandal.
Well, he started looking at the huge craft through his binoculars and began to see 2 rows of windows.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, and we probably won't get this far, Betty actually drew a drawing of the craft that they saw. So if you want to Google this story, there's plenty out there about Betty and Barney Hill and their alien abduction. But they watched the red lights and they appeared on the side of the objects. And Betty told Barney to stop the car. So he stopped in the middle of the road near the area called Indian Head and got out and looked. The object had, as they described, it swung toward them. Some of these wordings may not be correct and not make sense in sentences because I'm reading them off. And we're sitting in a rather dark room with a big bright light in our face. But it swung toward them, not more than a short city block away and not more than 2 treetops high, and began hovering silently in the air. Barney said that the shape of the object was large and glowing. Like a pancake size, the object then he estimated to be larger than a jet airliner, then swung into what was described as the perfect silent arc across the road a few hundred feet in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
This thing is so close to them.
Yeah, I mean, he's describing it as being very close. Now, for you guys out there, what she's reading is the transcripts from the original interviews. So we're hearing it as they told their story.
Well, he begins walking toward this object. Betty stays in the car.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. He now could see the red lights on the side of the object belonged to 2 fin-like projections that were extended outwards. The object remained silent strangely through the light of the craft. No light fell on the ground. The craft slowly descended in his direction as he walked toward it. Betty started calling out to him, but he didn't hear her and he looked through the binoculars again. And then it was Barney that claimed that he saw somewhere around 10 figures standing in the windows.
Mm-hmm.
That right there would have made me want to turn around, because by now I've already experienced seeing a UFO. And at this point, I've heard the things that people claim they do to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so to avoid being probed, I believe I would leave the scene at this time. But one thing that fascinates me is there was no sound of this. Silently. Some people, when they claim to see UFOs, they hear this like whoop, whoop, whoop sound.
Mm-hmm.
But they heard nothing.
Well, they did describe before the incident happened, they kept hearing what they described as a piano tuner, the humming sound.
Yeah, that's later on in the story.
Mm-hmm.
But right now they're hearing beeps. But they did hear that humming sound, which would be like the sound that I was trying my best to describe to you. But that's enough. I'm turning around at that point. But he says he saw 10 figures standing in the windows. And he said the figures were a humanoid in appearance, but they seemed somehow not human. They appeared to be wearing black glossy uniforms and black caps with bills on them. Then all at once, all of them but one figures moved away from the windows toward the back, and they started operating what looked like levers and what appeared to be some kind of control board. The craft moved in closer, and the fins extended further out. I'm assuming these fins probably extended out to balance, or maybe to even.
I was wondering if they weren't some kind of landing gears.
Well, I don't know if they land or not.
Well, at one point, because the way he's describing and leading up to it, I just when I hear it, I picture landing gears for some reason.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah,
it might be. But as they thin out, he notices that a ladder type thing begin to descend from the craft. All right, here's your sign, okay? Definitely they're coming out or they want you to go in this craft. So what would you do at this point, Michael?
I wouldn't go in.
I certainly wouldn't be just going closer to it. But I don't know, when you're in that state of fascination, like it's sort of like when we see an apparition or something, or something paranormal catches our eye. I guess we're so awestruck that we're watching this. We don't even think to get a recorder, voice recorder, or anything. Like we caught something outside our house that night that they used on the TV show that finally is going to be airing on the History Channel Canada here pretty soon. I got the word today, and I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about it airing in Canada. But the object that we caught in front of our house, we were so awestruck watching this live on our security cameras. We didn't go outside. We were just watching in fascination as this thing starts taking shape and begins to form and get thicker. So I imagine when you're in that state of fascination, you just want to know more and watch. So Barney claimed his memory of this part was blurry, but he recalled the slanted eyes of the figure remaining in the window, whom he assumed to be the leader staring at him, particularly feeling the figure's intense concentration terrified him. And he took off running back towards the car, hopped in, and took off as fast as he could, repeatedly yelling to Betty, and quote, "They're going to capture us." Barney was practically hysterical. Betty looked out the window as they drove off, trying to watch this object, but she couldn't see it, although strangely, she couldn't see any stars in the sky either. And then they heard a series of irregular beeping noises, which they said sounded like they were bouncing off the trunk of the car. They compared the noises to the sound of someone dropping a tuning fork, like you were saying. The car vibrated with each beat, and they felt an unusual tingling sensation throughout their bodies. As it did so, a kind of drowsiness came over them, and their awareness of things began to dull. Moments later, they weren't quite sure how long. Then they heard a second series of beepings, and their awareness started returning as though a fog still lay over their minds. They were not exactly processing what was happening. Barney was still driving, and they remained silent for a few moments as they tried to figure out where they were. And soon they realized they were now near Ashland, about 35 miles from where they had encountered the craft. However, they had very little memory having driven those 35 miles. 35 miles. Something similar happened to Michael and I. We've told this story before on one of our podcasts. We were coming from LaGrange, Georgia, driving back to Carrollton, Georgia. And we were on a stretch of road, and it usually takes us about, what, 35, 40 minutes to get to here, to get to where we were.
Oh, yeah, almost an hour.
It's an hour drive total, but we had
Yeah.
already traveled into the trip some.
Yeah, we had traveled into the trip some.
Maybe we lost about, I would say at the least 30, 35 minutes. The next thing we knew, we were coming into an area in Carroll County. LaGrange is in Troup County. We were beginning into Heard County, the last thing we remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, look at the clock, and I'm like, Michael, we're already here.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know how that happened. It was like we jumped forward in time because neither one of us remember driving that stretch of road.
So we kind of lost time.
We didn't lose time. We just lost 30 minutes. I guess we did. Mm-hmm. It's hard to explain what happened to us because I really don't know. I know that we were not aware of about 30, 35 minutes of our trip. Amanda said, congrats. That's amazing. That's exciting. Oh, yes, it is, girl. I can't hardly wait for our Canadian friends to be able to see this. Mm-hmm. We've got several people from Canada on our Facebook page, Fox Paranormal, and just excited for them to get to see this because, to my knowledge, it's on Hulu. Oh, I know it's on Hulu, but I don't think they can get Hulu there. Here in the States, Repossessed, the TV show, is available on Hulu, Apple TV, and Disney Plus through Hulu.
Disney Plus.
So, yeah, we're excited about that. But they didn't speak much for the rest of the ride home, apart from agreeing not to discuss what had just happened with others. The craft was nowhere to be seen. The Hills returned home around 5 a.m., a few hours after they had expected. Immediately, the couple noticed and felt a great many abnormal things. Neither of them felt right. They both felt disturbed, strange, and uncomfortable in a very vague way. Both of their watches had stopped and would never run again. The strap of the binoculars was broken. Mm-hmm. Betty felt a strange compulsion to leave her luggage out of the house and throw the food away that they had on the trip. Betty changed her clothes and noticed her new dress, which I've seen pictures of it. I think it's at the University of New Hampshire.
I think so.
I think it may be. Yeah. I am not 100% sure about that. Don't quote me on that. Noticed her new dress, which was in good condition before, had been torn in a few different locations and had a stain on it. She put it away and would not retrieve it for 3 years. The tops of Barney's shoes were scuffed up, and he had a strange compulsion to examine his
groin area.
Yeah. So, you can only imagine what that might be about. The probing, that is just so crazy. But they sat down together and they tried to discuss their experiences, but they still had difficulty recounting much of it, especially the period between the two series of beeps in which they had traveled 35 miles, mm-hmm. which was almost completely blank. Betty recalled Barney making a sharp turn somewhere, but she wasn't sure where. Barney recalled a roadblock or somewhere along their journey. They both remembered the large luminous moon shape, which seemed to be setting on the end underneath the pines, and this was all they could recall. They went on to bed, and the incident still haunted them. When they awoke that afternoon, Betty was intensely curious about what had happened. Once again, she would not exactly hold the commitment of keeping it private for more than a few hours. She called her sister to talk about the incident. That day, Barney, however, was not interested in speaking about it. In fact, he had entered into a kind of state of denial about it, in which he would persist for some time. He wasn't sure what had happened, but felt it best to shove it out of his mind and convince himself it was nothing. Naturally, they were frustrated of each other's opposite approach. Upon hearing the story, Betty's sister called a psychiatrist. No, a physicist. I'm sorry. They knew asking for advice on how to identify any potential evidence. The physicist said that if there was any radiation on it, they would be able to pick it up. Let me get past the reading and just tell the story. And they suggested a compass.
Mm-hmm.
So they began using the compass, and they went over the vehicle. And when doing that, they found tiny little spots. They were shiny and circular spots, and they were about the size of a $50. And it looked like the trunk had been polished in those spots. And it occurred to her that this was where the beeping noises had come from the night before. The compass had not reacted usually anywhere else on the car, but when she placed it there on those spots, the needle would begin to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was that indicating? Radiation? Or
a magnetic pull of some type? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the same way we would, used to use a compass to register EMFs, electromagnetic fields.
Right. And then they did discuss it with the Air Force Base, because they were beginning to take UFO sighting reports at the time. And they did, however, leave out some of the most bizarre details.
Yeah. And that was the time, the Air Force was working on Project Blue Book.
What is that?
That was an official investigation that the government had started on UFO sightings.
So, what they decided to do, I'm not sure where I'm right now. What they decided to do was go in separate rooms and draw what they had seen. So they go in separate rooms and they begin to draw. This was about 10 days after the incident. The sketches that they drew were very similar. Like they had seen the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Betty had 5 or 6 nights in a row, a series of very intense, realistic dreams. And I am not really sure. We are still on here.
Well, we're back on the screen.
I have dreams, but my dreams are more paranormal. So, okay, we are on. My dreams are more geared toward paranormal. Like, I dream at night that this dark figure comes in my room and bends over me, and it doesn't say anything. And then it's like, I really, for real, wake up, and it's like I sense something leaving me real fast.
Mm-hmm.
So dreams can be intense. And so, but she says her dreams were realistic, and she discussed them with some friends, and some friends from work suggested that the dreams could be nothing more than just dreams, and then that they could in fact be repressed memories. And this convinced Betty to write them down. Thankfully, she did, as the dreams would become a crucial piece of their story later on. Barney remained very uncomfortable by the topic and continued to try to ignore it. Betty became more obsessed, and she was off to research as much as she could about UFOs and contacted individuals who were involved with the information that she found, namely officials involved in National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena.
Project Blue Book.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You're so smart. I told you, Michael knows everything about everything.
So the government was actually involved in this before Barney and Betty even knew about it.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So they come in contact with Major James McDonald of the Air Force, and he sat down at their home for an extraordinarily thorough interview, which would end up lasting 11 hours.
Wow, that's a long
Yes.
interview.
And even through the 11 hours, the story was found to be consistent.
Well, that is one thing that's been reported all through time, is all the interviews that Betty and Barney did was always consistent, even when they were separated and they would be interviewed. There was always consistencies with their stories.
And still, the story is so fascinating. I mean, if we stopped right here at this part of the story, it's still fascinating. What still is just unreal is the amount of time. They left the diner in Colebrook at 10:05 to leave for their home in Portsmouth. According to Mr. Hill, he himself said it was not less than a 4-hour drive. Accounting for their stops to look at the object, they should have been home about 2 or 3 a.m. At the latest, but instead got home around 5 a.m. So they were missing 2-3 hours of time.
Yeah, which is significant by just by itself right there.
Right. The incident that happened to us, we were not losing time. Like when we got in the car, like the clock didn't say a crazy time. I even looked at the clock. Okay, here, it's such and such time, but we've traveled it a lot faster than normal. It's like something just picked us up and moved us without us knowing to another location. It was crazy. The time was there, the correct time, but we don't have any memory of those few minutes. Insane. And that not only happened to us once, but a couple of the other times. When we would travel back, it'd be like, we're already here. But it wasn't as significant as the 30 some odd minutes.
Which makes me wonder, how many people's actually had encounters with extraterrestrials and didn't even realize it.
I wonder if we did.
I don't know. I have no knowledge of it. I mean,
I don't know either. It was just insane that those few minutes we can't account for, but we don't remember living those minutes. We don't remember driving those minutes.
Right.
But we were at a place at the same time we normally would have got there.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just a mystery. Just a mystery. But still, as they focused on it, things still just didn't make sense. If something like that happened, I mean, what happened to us is confusing enough, but to know that you lost 2 or 3 hours, it just didn't make sense to them. And as far as they knew, they just stopped. Barney got out. He went close to a UFO. A ladder extended. He got frightened, ran back to the car, and they left and remembered hearing the beeping sounds that
Right.
sounded like they were coming from the trunk of the car.
Right.
And that's all the memory that they had. And then 3 hours later.
Well, the time loss would be significant to me. I think, if we experienced a 2 or 3 hour lapse of time, uh, being paranormal investigators, we would be looking into it probably more detailed
Right.
than Barney and Betty did.
I'd be out there every day trying to figure out what
I would
happened.
be right back out there on that highway.
At night. I know you would.
Yeah. I'd be saying, come on down, boys.
With your little pistol.
It's a big pistol.
Well, it's a big pistol, but Michael's been giving me target practice, and I'm loving it. I love shooting that gun. Well, actually, I've been practicing with a BB gun because I don't like the loud noise.
Air pistol.
Air pistol. I mean, I'm shooting those targets. I'm hitting them.
Yeah, she's been practicing with an air pistol.
Michael said he's getting scared because I'm getting too dang good at it. Should he be worried?
She is good.
So a psychiatrist comes into play here. So surely under hypnosis, they'll be able to remember the 2 or 3 hours that they lost. So
I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to hypnosis. I just don't know if I totally grasp that concept or not. I guess because I've never been put under hypnosis, so I don't know if it's real or not.
According to what the Hills have always said, they never meant for this story to get out. They told the story to some friends, co-workers. They told it to their church group. That's your major no-no. If you don't want anybody to know anything, don't tell them, because it's going to be told. Somebody is going to tell. It never fails. There's one person in my life that I know for a fact, and it's been proven that I can tell anything to, and it stays just between me and this person. And it's rare to have somebody like that. So if the average person maybe has 1, 2 people that they can confide in without their business being told, they're telling multiple people. And they're telling how many people was in that church group.
It's true. I mean,
so like 2 years later, the Hills finally sat down with a prominent psychiatrist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, an expert in hypnosis. Dr. Simon was not interested in UFOs, but he found their case fascinating. He's probably at this time trying to diagnose their mental problems. Maybe they made the story up. Maybe one convinced the other, and that's the reason they have these memories. Maybe it's a mental problem. And so he's probably thinking, this is fascinating because I have 2 people who think they saw the same thing and describe it the same way. So I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to hypnotize these people. Have you ever been hypnotized?
No.
I haven't.
That's why I said I'm real skeptical about hypnotism.
I want to be. I want to be. If I were to be hypnotized, I would want to be hypnotized to forget 3 things that happened in my life. Like have them hypnotize me and tell me you will no longer remember these things. They're gone. I mean, I don't know if that's possible. I'm not too familiar with hypnotists.
Well, I don't know one firsthand. I don't know of anybody that claims they have the ability to hypnotize people.
And the reason the psychiatrist wanted to do this is mostly so he could relieve the anxiety they were having. You know, they were like PTSD over this. Barney was.
Oh,
Betty
big
was
time.
open,
Big time.
but Barney was not taking this very well. You know, maybe it was the probing, you know, maybe he was feeling some kind of way, you know.
Violated.
Exactly, violated.
He's feeling violated.
Like molested, you
Mhm.
know. He doesn't remember what happened, but I'm telling you, if somebody examines a man there, are they going to feel it for a while? I mean, you had a test done where they did something down there. This is embarrassing to talk about. But in the afterwards, did you feel it after the test was over? Pain, some kind of irritation?
Well, definitely. I mean, you know, depending on what was specifically done, you know, there's going to be that feeling of being violated there. Now, what I find interesting, Barney is reacting through all this the way I would have expected Barney to react.
Mm-hmm.
Betty, on the other hand, I'm not so sure. I haven't put my finger on it yet, but her reactions and her testimony, you know, seems a little off to me.
But they both experience the same thing. I think
I
what's
know.
going on here is women are more open about talking. We love to talk. We can't help it. Some men do too, but women more so than men. And so you got to tell somebody. Somebody tells me something, the first thing I got to do is I got to call somebody. I got to tell them this. And so probably that's how she's feeling right now. She's got to tell somebody. Or maybe she's hoping that somebody will understand what she's talking about and maybe say, Betty, that happened to me too. You're
Mhm.
not alone. That's happened to me too.
But you know, part of her testimony, Destiny, is you know she said that she communicated with the extraterrestrials, but Barney said he didn't.
So he wanted to help them with their anxiety, you know, and poor Barney, you know, as the story goes, he was affected so much more than her. It's like she was fascinated, but he was devastated. So they would meet with Dr. Simon every Saturday until June the 27th of that year. The Hills would be separately hypnotized, each time recounting their stories with the other out of the room. Dr. Simon directed them not to remember anything they brought up during the hypnosis after they were brought out of it unless he informed them otherwise, which, due to the nature of the hypnosis work, Simon wanted to keep the memories repressed until it was over to prevent communication between the couple because it would disrupt their memories and access the full emotional effect of the story because risking bringing it up to the surface. These sessions were recorded on 11 hours of tape,
Mm.
what they were about to tell Dr. Simon. And could you imagine this poor psychiatrist? I mean, he's got them under hypnosis. He's hypnotizing them one at a time. Okay, let's bring Betty in so Barney can't hear. Let's bring Barney in so Betty can't hear. And so that way he wanted to hear their stories individual to see if both the stories were the same,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we do. A lot of times when we're investigating, we do take our clients. Um, I always like to take the female out, maybe walk in the yard or sit in a different room while Michael speaks with somebody else in the house. And then, you know, we get their separate stories, you know, and it's not that we're trying to discredit what they're telling us. It's just sometimes one person can recount more than the other. And so we like to speak with all the family members individually. And sometimes you find out doing that, you know, sometimes they're more comfortable one-on-one talking to just one person than a whole team of people coming in. And, there are paranormal situations that women aren't comfortable talking about, or men, about things that happen to them
True.
um, during episodes of paranormal events going on in their home. So we're not going to dive down into that. That's a podcast for another time.
A whole nother story.
A whole nother story right there. Um,
We really need some feedback on the UFO and the Betty and Barney Hill story.
we're not going to get through with this either. Um, we may have to do a part 2 of this and then dive into the story that we
I
have
think
for
so.
next week, because our time is running out. And what made this case famous, Simon, is what made this case famous. It was while standing in the field at Indian Head, seeing the craft up close, that Barney's conscious memory began to become vague under hypnosis. He was able to elaborate more on what he saw, the beings coming more visible through the windows, as he referred to as men throughout the discussion, wore black uniforms with what seemed like scarves over their shoulders. He said that as he observed the figures running to the back wall, one of them turned his head around, looking over his shoulder, smiled at him. However, this was very vague, and he later said that he could not remember their mouths very well, and that the eyes only moved in a way that he interpreted as a smile. The figure who remained in the window, whom he assumed was the leader, also wore what he described as a shiny black jacket. The eyes of the leader had a profound impact on Barney as he felt them looking on him. Even the figure was not present. Barney said that he believed this figure was somehow communicating with him, encouraging him to stay there, like stay where you are and keep looking over. Uh, Barney had difficulty explaining how exactly this communication was happening. A lot of people say that claim to be abducted is, or when they ran into aliens somewhere, that the aliens' mouths never moved, but they spoke telepathically to people. Now, you've probably all heard stories about how if we as humans could learn to use 100% of our brains, that we would find out that all of us have abilities, and a lot of people do have abilities. They're enlightened. Maybe that enlightening comes when this is a job for John Covey, psychic medium.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think it's too is a lot of times we shut off things, and maybe, I don't know. Michael and I watched the TV show. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but they could speak to each other without moving their mouth or without any sound coming out telepathically. So that's exactly what is going to happen here when we continue the story next week. I do want to dive into a couple of more stories, and we were crunched for time tonight. I found out our checking account had been hacked for over $2,000, which our account is frozen, and thankful. I had some cash on me to get us through. Michael may have a little bit, but the bank says it takes 5 to 7 days. Apple, which somebody helped themselves to a lot of Call of Duty playtime or whatever it is. So I hope they enjoy that at my expense and Michael's. But trying to deal with the bank before they closed, and then getting on the phone with Apple, and come to find out I was hacked through I don't know, possibly an old iPhone that we used to have that had the information of an old email address in it. Um, it was an older iPhone that made all these charges on Apple. So I can't ever remember not turning one in and trading it in, or Daddy losing one, which that's a possibility. He did lose an iPhone and we had the service cut off, but still, I don't know. A hacker can get into stuff. But we got hacked and we broke for a few days, but we're going to be all right. Michael came home like, oh, I hope somebody's going to jail. They never find out who these hackers are. Never, never, never. Probably somebody in India, maybe. Who knows? Or
Well, I
Russia,
put a curse on them.
or the Dominican. Who knows? Don't you do that. It'll come back on you.
The aliens are going to take them.
It'll come back ×3. Don't be doing that.
Aliens are going to take them. And they're going to probe them.
That's some deep stuff, baby.
Yeah.
But I do want to tell you that Michael and I are excited. This month we go and do an event at the USS North Carolina in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yes.
And we can't wait. So if you bought a ticket to this event, we are looking forward to seeing you there. It's going to be several other people that you may know of, have seen from TV. So really, they didn't advertise that anybody that had been on TV was going to be there. So people that bought the tickets will be surprised. And I'm not telling you who else is going to be there besides us, but you're going to be surprised if you got a ticket to go to this event. Also in July, Michael and I will be at the Gettysburg Bash in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
Then September 14th, 15th, and I think I've got the dates right for a change, we will be at the Deep South Paracomic-Con, and that is a Saturday and Sunday event, and we get to tell our tales of the paranormal, and you'll get to see a lot of things. Look at there, Deep South Paracomic-Con, the 14th and the 15th at the Ozark Civic Center, Ozark, Alabama. And if you go and you look on the page, Deep South Paracomic-Con, the details of the motel is there. And it also, I was reading that just today, the motel that we're going to be staying in has reports of spirits. So you definitely want to stay in that motel because it's probably hour and a half to the next motel. So make sure you get your reservations now before all the rooms are booked. And I expect this event to be so fabulous, and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people are going to come through. And we're excited. There's so much talent going to be there. You just have to go to the page and see for yourself who's going to be there. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to be at the Warrens Paracon, and I'm excited about that. There is a specific name to that. It'll take me 2 months. Oh, Charles, you're going to have to go back and listen. He forgot. Well, I think it's been a couple of weeks since we've actually did a podcast. And so I really didn't have time today to go and share it around. I usually invite people on the Facebook invite, and then I send the link to people in their inbox, and I text it to people, and we get all these viewers, and I love doing that, but I just didn't have time today. But that will be our last event for the year that I know of, unless something else comes up.
Never know.
You never know. You never know.
People reach out to us and say, can you come to our Comic-Con or can you come to our Paracon? No, you never know.
This is true. We have had last minutes before.
Oh, yes.
And we'll do it if it's close enough by to us. The only difference is this year we won't be flying to these events. We're going to be driving because Michael wants to see the countryside while I sit in my seat and I'm dying, wanting to stretch my legs. So we're going to see how this works. It ought to be something else, but I'm willing to do it if it makes somebody happy. Well, I've enjoyed it tonight. I know I did a lot of reading, and that's because some notes that I made were misplaced, and there's so much to this story, and I didn't want to leave anything out because it's such a fascinating story.
It is a very fascinating story about Betty and Barney.
Yes.
You know, what they experienced and how they were telling their story.
And I even look at my top. Since we were talking paranormal, it's got UFOs. It's got moons on it. It's got the sun, stars. Um, this is actually my nightgown. And I told Michael, I said, I think I'm going to wear my nightgown over there. And Michael looks at me like, huh? You know how a puppy looks when they're confused and they like stick their ears up and they go. That was what Michael did. But I said, no, it's appropriate. And so he let me wear my nightie over here to our Fox studio. My voice has been going in and out, and I've tried to keep it going, but it's almost gone. But guys, till next week, we're going to finish the story and let you know what happened after the hypnotist gets a hold to Betty and Barney, and we're going to tell their story. And then we've got some more stories lined up, and they are as well fascinating. Keep in mind, this is one UFO story, I believe. I've always believed this story. I have no reason not to. I really believe this happened. Maybe some of the accounts at the end, maybe not. But for the most part, yes, I believe this story. Do you believe this story?
I believe something happened to him. I believe, that probably some of the details over the years it's been told and retold and retold, it's probably stretched a little bit.
Maybe. But now their accounts are on recordings.
That's what I would love to hear is the original recordings.
Yes.
Hearing Betty and Barney's voices telling the story.
Exactly.
What they believe happened to them. I think that would be interesting.
There may be clips around. We'll have to research and see what we can find.
By all means, if there's somebody out there that has information on this story, contact us. We could love to hear the feedback.
Or listen to me. If you have ever been abducted or have had experiences with UFOs or aliens, please contact us. My email address is, I hate giving this out because it's the one that got hacked, but it's DestinyFox@gmail.com. That's DESTINY, the letter D, Fox@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're willing, maybe we'll have you on the show. Who knows? But this is a subject that I'm really diving into because I want to know more about it. And till next week, guys, from Michael and Destiny Fox, peace and love.
Good night, everybody.